Alright, sorry again. My phone ran out of battery again while recording the last video, but okay, see, number 25, for number 25, first thing you need to do is recognize that it's a triangle, and the side lengths of a triangle are going to be x squared plus y squared equals z squared being the hypotenuse. And since we already know the hypotenuse, just plug that in, 25 squared, x squared plus y squared. Then what you do is you find the derivative of that, so that's going to be 2x dx over dt plus 2y dy over dt equals 0. Then, since we already know what dx over dt is, as it was stated in the problem, 2 feet, it's going to be 2 feet per second. So you just plug that in, and then you get 4x plus 2y over dy dt equals 0. Then you subtract 4x from both sides and divide both sides by 2y to leave dy dt by itself. So you get dx over you got 4x over 2y, well, negative 4x over 2y equals dy over dt. Then you just simplify it, and you get negative 2x over y equals dy dt. Then what you're going to want to do is see that y, go back to the original equation. You see that y squared, subtract both sides by x squared, and then you get y squared equals 25 squared minus x squared. And then you find the square root of both of them, and you evaluate the 25 squared. So then you get y equals the square root of 625 minus x squared. After you find that, what you want to do, after you find that, then you're going to want to plug this back into the equation in place for y. So then you're going to end up with negative 2x over the expression we just came up with for y. Then you're going to plug in x, which for the first part of a is 7. So you plug in 7, and then you get negative 2 times 7 over the square root of 625 minus 7 squared, which in this case 7 squared is 49, and 625 minus 49 is 576, and 2 times 7 equals 14. So you're going to get this expression, and trust me, the square root of 576 is 24. Then you simplify that, and then you get negative 7 over 12 feet per second. For the second part, you're going to plug in 15, so then you're going to get negative 30 over the square root of 400, which is 20. So then you're going to get negative 3 over 2 feet per second. And for the last one, you plug in 24, and 2 times 24 is going to end up being 48, and 24 squared, which I already told you the square root of 576 is 24. So reverse that. This 24 squared is 576, and 625 minus 576 is equal to 49. And the square root of 49 is 7. So you're going to end up with negative 48 over 7 feet per second. Okay. A is the easy one. This is the one I messed up 2 times on. 25b. Well, C is even harder, but for B, you're going to want to get the equation for a triangle. For the area of a triangle, so area equals half base times height, which I'm representing with x and y. Then you find the derivative of that, so dA over dt equals half, use the product rule here, half y dx over dt plus half x dy over dt. Then you're going to want to figure out what y is. We already know that y equals the square root of 625 minus x squared. So I put that in parentheses and trust me, that's a half. Half exponent. Then you use the chain rule. So then you treat this, you leave this alone, and you just do the outside. So you put the half down, and you subtract this by 1. So you're going to end up with half 625 minus x squared, all to the power of negative 1/2. Then you do the derivative of what's in the inside. So that's 625 is going to equal 0. Negative x squared is going to end up be deriving into negative 2x. And then out of all that, you take out dx over dt, which then equals to, first off, the negative 2 is going to cancel out with the half, and you're going to want to put this in the denominator because it's a negative exponent, and it's going to be the square root in the denominator. So you're going to end up with x over negative x over the square root of 625 minus x squared. Which, in this case, because b only asks for one value, just plug in 7 right here for x. So you're going to get 7 over, we already know that 625 minus 49 equals 576. And the square root of 576 is 24. And and that's going to equal dy over dt. And we already know that y for 7 from a, if x equals 7, then y is going to equal 24. So then you just plug them in. You plug in 24 for y, you plug in 2 for dx over dt, you plug in 7 for x, and you plug in the value we just got, negative 7 over 24, for dy over dx. Then you evaluate that, and then you get 24 minus 49 over 24. You make them common denominators, so you find 24 squared over 24, which is 576. 576 minus 49 is equal to 527 over 24 feet squared per second. Now the hardest one, 25, which you're finding the angle. I decided to use tangent, but you could use anything. But tangent of the angle that we're trying to find is equal to x over y. SOHCAHTOA, TOA, opposite over hypotenuse. The opposite being x, and the opposite over adjacent, and the adjacent being y. Then you find the derivative of that. So the derivative of tangent is going to be secant squared of the angle, and then you multiply that by the derivative of the inside, which is just derivative of angle over dt, and equals, you use the quotient rule, low d high minus high d low all over the square of what's below. So you're going to end up with y dx over dt minus x dy over dt all over y squared. Then, to get rid of the secant squared, remember secant is 1 over cosine. Oh, that was bad. Sine. In this case, cosine squared. So you just multiply both sides by cosine squared to cancel out the secant squared. So you just multiply both sides by cosine squared of the angle to get rid of the secant squared, and then you get this. Then you evaluate adjacent, in this case being the y value, which is going to end up being 24, because x is 7 in this problem. So and adjacent is going to be the y. So you're going to put 24 over 25, which is the hypotenuse, all squared, remember, to keep that square. And then you evaluate this. You know what dx equals? Dx over dt, it's 2. 1 over y, we know y is 24 from all the previous times we've been doing this. And you know x is 7, y is 4, you just evaluate that, and you plug in the same dy over dt we used in b. Then you evaluate again, and then you end up with 24 squared over 25 squared, all multiplied by 1 over 12 plus 7 squared all over 24 squared times 12. Then you keep evaluating it. I decided not to evaluate the exponents, just keep them. So I ended up here. and I just crossed out the 24 squared on the top and the 24 squared on the bottom because they're going to cancel out anyways. And you're going to end up with 24 squared plus 7 squared all over 25 squared plus 12. Now, after this, I evaluated the exponents, and you get 576 plus 49 over 625 times 12. Then you add these up, and then you happen to get 625. So then these both cancel out, and you end up with 1 over 12, and 1 over 12. Well, this isn't degrees. I can show you that. This is radians per second. All right. So that's 25 done. And then 26. 26 is a lot more simple. Same thing again. You know, it's a triangle. It's pretty much the same thing as last problem. See, this is a lot less work here. And you know that in this case, the hypotenuse is 5, so 5 squared is 25. And then, you know, y equals 25, same thing as last problem. The hypotenuse squared minus x squared, all to the square root equals y. So then, you find the derivative of this, you get 2x dx over dt plus 2y dy over dt equals 0. Then you plug in the values. So for x, you know that x is going to end up being 2.5 meters. Dx over dt plus 2y, and you know that he's lifting it. So this time it's the y value, the rate of the y value that's constant, which is 0.15, and equals 0. Then you're gonna want to multiply this over, so you get 5 dx over dt plus 3 over 10 y equals 0. Then you add both sides by 3 over 10, and you divide both sides by 5 to leave the dx over dt by itself. Then, now is when I decided to plug in this value of y that we got here into the y here. So I plug that in, and then, so you plug that in, 25 minus, you know, x is 2.5, 2.5 squared is 6.25. Yeah, 2.5 squared equals 6.25. So then you get that. Then you subtract it, and you get the square root of 18.75. And then I just put it in the numerator, and you get negative 3 times the square root of 18.75 over 50 meters per second. And that's it. Sorry this video was so long. This was a lot of work.